Hi, I'm Dr. Mike Nevell. I'm the Industrial Heritage Support Officer for England, based at the Ironbridge Gorge Museum Trust. I've been a lecturer at University of Manchester and Salford in the last 20 years. And my specialisms are industrial archaeology and industrial buildings. And tonight I'll be looking at the archaeology of the Bridgewater Canal and some field work I've been working on for the last 6 years. What I'm going to try and do in the next 10 or 15 minutes is talk very briefly about 6 years of field work that I was able to do with a series of volunteers and students from the University of Salford in the Manchester area on the Bridgewater Canal. I'm going to take you through that field work, and we'll have a look at the two main parts of it, which are at the Worsley Terminus of the Bridgewater Canal at the Salford end, by the actual coal mines. We've just been talking about some coal mines, so we're actually looking here at one of the big coal mine deposits that was exploited and really pushed forward industrialization in the UK in the 18th century. And just to sort of centre you where we are, Miles gave us a tour around the globe. Here we're focusing very much into the UK and into the northwestern part of England in the UK. And we're looking at the Bridgewater Canal in the North Midlands part of the canal network. There were over 4,000 miles of canals built in the UK between the 1750s and the 1830s. They were a major transportation of goods, particularly bulk goods, not just coal, but stone and timber. They connected some of the major industrial manufacturing centres in England, Scotland and Wales. And as you can see from the map here, they really provided a waterway network across the eastern and southern Wales and most of England. The canal network in Scotland was separate. So I'm going to look at the Bridgewater Canal. The Bridgewater Canal is not the world's first canal. It's not even Britain's first canal, but it is the first industrial canal that demonstrates the value and the money to be made from building long distance canals. And one of the key things for the Bridgewater Canal is that it crosses watersheds. So it's not just confined to a river valley, it crosses several watersheds. So it crosses the River Mersey, crosses the River Irwell, crosses the River Bollin over its 40-mile length. And therefore, it's seen as one of the revolutionary canals, one of the pioneering canals, and it's mentioned as such by Dickey. And it has an impact on the canal design of European canals later in the 18th century, and also canals in North America in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. The canal is financed by the Duke of Bridgewater, but it's actually built, overseen by James Brindley, the water engineer, and John Gilbert, who's the estate manager for the Duke of Bridgewater at his Worsley estates. And this became a tourist attraction. As soon as it opened to Manchester in 1761, it was later extended another 30 miles down the Mersey Valley towards Liverpool and opened in 1773. As soon as it was opened, people came to look at the mines, and they were looking at the canal itself. This is a contour canal with no locks until you get to Runcorn, but it's a canal that goes underground. There are 80 kilometres, 52 miles of underground canals. And this is one of the first coal canals where we get such extensive underground canals. It's the way it's developed over 100 years is we end up with three major levels stretching on the surface from Worsley northwards towards Bolton, which is sort of 5 or 6 miles to the north of Worsley. But the underground canals themselves extend far further. And the volumes of coal coming out of here are quite significant. So in the late 18th century, we have 100,000 tonnes of coal a year coming out of those underground mines, and that leaps to 200,000 in the early 19th century. And if you think of those in terms of boat movements, well, we're talking about perhaps a dozen boat movements going into the mine and another dozen's coming out in the late 18th century, and double that by the 1840s. Now that's important because the way those boat movements were managed is reflected in the entrance to the mine, and that's the entrance. This is part of the entrance to the mine. You can see here. This is Worsley Delph. It's protected as a scheduled ancient monument in the UK, and it's also listed as well. It's one of those iconic monuments of industrialisation we get in Britain. Every industrial region in the UK will claim they're the home of the Industrial Revolution. This is Salford's claim to being the home of this part of the Industrial Revolution. As you can see here, the canal comes into the basin and the entrance to the mines, and it's very much overgrown and silted up. And this was the view in the mid-2010s, at which point the local city, the Salford city, teamed up with the owners of the canal, because the Bridgewater Canal is unusually in the UK still a private company. It didn't get nationalised in the 1940s for reasons I won't go into at this point because we haven't got time, to set up a series of improvements to the canal, particularly to bring the public down into the basin here, the terminus, so that the public can see how the coal boats enter the mine. Now, in order to renovate that involved works on the 1750s turnpike bridge that runs across the Delph itself. Delph is a Middle English word meaning quarry, and in fact this part of the canal uses the waters of Worsley Brook to provide, if you like, a basin and access underground into the coal deposits. And the bridge was originally built across the line of the Worsley Brook, and then later on it's expanded to cross the line of the canal. And consequently, under that bridge, there's a whole series of rooms and access points, which at one point we thought we might be able to use as a heritage centre, but it proved impractical. But these are rooms that were built under the bridge in order to control boats coming into and out of the Delph area, into and out of the mine. And also there's access to the local corn mill, which from the late 18th century was steam powered, using coal directly from the mines. And you can see some of the archaeological fieldwork we did surveying the bridge here. Once we got into the Delph in 2018 and 2019, the major focus of the archaeology was around the building of a new viewing platform on the eastern side of the Delph. And that, rather unexpectedly, revealed two new road tunnels giving access to the eastern side of the Delph. And you can see the road tunnels here and the survey work we were doing in the Delph. Nobody had seen these before, and they're not recorded on any maps, and it's actually very difficult to see them in the documents. So these are completely unexpected. And not only were these unexpected, but there were also two keys for tying up boats that were located as the Delph was dredged in 2018, 2019. And all these features, the two keys, the boats, and these two road tunnels, are related to the way in which the boats are managed coming into and out of the Delph. But also we think the tunnel you can see here is linking directly to the manorial corn mill. So it looks like that was used as a way of bringing coal directly from the mine to the corn mill itself. You can see here some of the features of the first key that we found on the eastern side of the Delph, the stone wall defining the key, and also we had an early 19th century iron winch that we were able to preserve and is now on display. And when we went back and looked at some of the early views of this site from about 1807, we were able to spot that the key had been shown on one of these early views, which I've arrowed with that big red arrow on that slide there. But you have to know it's there to understand that feature. So this is all about moving boats into the Delph and then managing the workflow of boats in and out of the underground mines. And that's where this second key comes in, which I've arrowed on this map here. You can see when we dredged the Delph, we got another of these stone-lined keys that came up. This is view from January 2019, and that had been hidden under a pile of silt from the 1970s. We just thought it was a pile of silt. When we removed the silt, we were very surprised to find yet another key. In that dredging process, we also came up with evidence for some of the mine boats running into and out of the Bridgewater Canal. There were 3 types of mine boats. There were 2 types of narrowboat, some box boats for taking the coal, and there was also a broader beam, 14-foot wide, for crossing the Mersey estuary from the locks at Runcorn to Liverpool Port. And what you can see here are fragments, wooden fragments of some of those narrowboats, and also on the right hand side there's an orange digger which is moving, but not completely removing, but sort of moving to one side. One of those 14-foot wide, flat-bottomed sailing vessels that was used to gain access to the port at Liverpool. We also had the opportunity to look at the mine entrances themselves. There was a proposal to open up one of the mine tunnels as a visitor attraction, but the coal authority decided it was too dangerous because of gases coming out of the mine. So instead, the island in between the 2 tunnels into the coal mine was investigated and renovated as an event space, and that gave us the opportunity to look at the sluices for the right-hand entrance, which you can see there into the mine, and the left-hand exit from the mine. And although there's lots of 20th century replacement work here and late 19th century replacement work, we did find the original 1750s and 1760s fittings. And we also worked with 2 local historians who've been working at Worsley since the 1960s, John Aldridge and Judith Atkinson. In fact, Judith Atkinson was amongst the last people to enter by boat the underground tunnels, and she did that in the there was a trip in the 1990s, but an earlier one in the late 1960s, early 1970s. And so we've tried to understand how the Delph worked as a control point for bringing in the empty mine boats, and then taking out the full boats, the boats full of coal. Each boat would carried about between 20 and 30 tons, and that's a major logistical feat to get them in and out of the mine. If you bear in mind that by the 1790s there's 100,000 tons a year coming out of here. It's very easy just to focus on the Bridgewater Canal itself as a major industrial monument, as an iconic industrial feature, and indeed the entrance to the 80 kilometres, 50 miles of tunnels. But in 2018 and 2019, we also had the opportunity to look at the boat and timber yards that supported the canal and the underground coal mines. And that's in an area now known as Worsley Green. In fact, today Worsley Green is a very pleasant open space surrounded by arts and craft houses from the 1900s, with just the one monument which you can see here on this slide commemorating the canal. But in the 18th and 19th century, this was a canal port for the coal mines, one of the very first canal ports on the British canal system, although you wouldn't know it. One of the reasons you wouldn't know it is because the whole of this area was cleared in the 1900s when the works yards was closed, apart from the maintenance boats yards down on the canal itself, which you can see in this aerial slide from 2002. Because of that clearance work in the 1900s, there's actually very little on the ground to show what archaeology we have here. And what made it worse is that we only have 2 photographs of the works buildings for the canal and for the coal mines. And these are the 2 images here from Salford City Archives. So we took the opportunity with volunteers and students in 2018 and 2019 to have a look at the green. You can see a Google Earth map here showing earthworks on the green. And so we put down, I think it's 2018, we dug 3 trenches, and then in 2019 we dug another half a dozen, and we targeted 3 bits of the site. So we targeted the manager's house, which was an 18th century cottage which seems to have been repurposed as the works manager's house. Again, just the one photograph left of it, but when we excavated, we found substantial remains of the basement and the stairs into the basement, and we also had 16th and 17th century pottery that presumably predates all of this activity. And we also, secondly, looked at the wagon repair shop built on the green in the 1860s to service the railway lines that were put in for the new collieries to the east of Worsley, Delft. Those railway lines had access to the canal as well. So we were able to look at the floor of that wagon repair shop, record some of the evidence for metalworking on the site. And also we came across evidence for earlier activity on the site. There's actually a gasworks from the early 19th century that predates the wagon repair shop on this site. And the third element we looked at was the railway system across the green. Now, this was introduced again in the 1860s and 1870s, running eastwards away from Worsley to access the coal mines elsewhere in the village. But today you can see crop marks in the summer on the line of those railway networks, and we took the opportunity to confirm that's what we had using our students and volunteers. And one of the reasons we're doing this is because there is no reference today on this site to the fact that this was a major industrial hamlet and community. You can see this black and white postcard here from about 1920 that just shows the green village and the arts and crafts houses around it. And what we've been trying to do is confirm that there is archaeology here, the nature of that archaeology, and the plan was to go back in 2020. So obviously that didn't happen. So we're now going to try and go back later on this year. In the meantime, the public works around the entrance into the mines at Worsley Delft have been completed. The viewing platform is open, and we've now got this public sculpture in the Delft itself with the outline of boats showing where the boats would have entered the mine, empty boats, and then coming out on the left-hand side full of coal. And the peculiar spinning top metal structure in the middle is a reference to a 1760s jib crane, which was used to remove the stone from the Delft itself as part of the construction of the canal. So although I've been working here with volunteers and students for 6 years, I'm really hopeful that we can go back and finish that work on the workshops on the Delft and on the green, and understand more actually how the Bridgewater Canal worked as a canal and how the impact of the coal mining also influenced the development of the village. And if you want to go and read more about this, there's a number of recent publications in the last couple of years on the Bridgewater Canal and also on the Delft and the coal community at Worsley. So there we go. Thank you very much.